Hey everyone, let's talk for a few minutes about doing a frequency and a histogram for grouped data. Group data is when we're going to have more than one value in each class or each category. We do this a lot, especially with continuous data like time, things like that, where it's not just one or two. It could be 1.1, 1.4, 1.8, 1.9, then 2. So with continuous data, lots of times we have to group them or else we just end up with way too many different classes. So let me share my screen. I got a couple things I want to talk to you about with our PowerPoint first. That was weird. Okay, sorry about that. I don't know what I was doing. Okay, so one of the first things that we're going to have to do when we are dealing with grouped data is we're going to have to determine the number of classes that we need. It was easy when we were using discrete data, when it wasn't grouped and it was just whole numbers, like on our absences example or on our iPad example. We just chose all the different numbers that showed up because there weren't that many. But when we have lots and lots of numbers or continuous data and we have to group them, we have to decide, how are we going to group them? Are we going to group them by twos, by tens, by 20s? And so there's a little formula we use to determine our number of classes, and you see it here highlighted in yellow on our PowerPoint screen. 2 to the k power is greater than or equal to n. Now, k represents the number of classes, and n, as it always does when we're working in statistics, represents our number of data points. Okay, so say that we have a data set that has 20 numbers in it. We've got 20 data points. And so I need to find a k that is greater than or equal to 20. So if you remember from mathematics, if I say 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16, that's still not greater than 20, times 2 is 32. So 2 to the 5th power is 32. 32 was the closest one to 20 that was greater than 20. 16 was closer, but it was less than. So we want the closest one that is greater than or equal to n, in this example, 20. So I would say that my number of classes would be 5 in that example. Okay. Once we determine the number of classes, there's a few rules, but they're really guidelines. You know how we've talked about a lot of stuff that we've been doing in this class, like formatting our histograms. There is no one perfect answer. So I call these guidelines for your classes of group data. Number one, all of your classes need to be equal in size. And so if we just said we're going to have 5 classes, then those classes are all going to be 3 digits or 7 digits or 10 digits, but they're all going to be equal. And we're going to work a problem in a second. All classes need to be mutually exclusive, which means if our first class is 1, 2, 3, then our second class can't be 2 to 4, because the number 2 falls between 1 and 3, and it falls in the other class of 2 to 4. And one data point cannot go in 2 different classes. So therefore, the classes have to be mutually exclusive. Our classes have to include all data values. So our 5th class can't have an upper limit of 20 if our highest data value is 26. There has to be a spot for every single data point. We don't want any empty classes. If we make a class that's 7 to 10, and then when I sort my data, there's no 7s, there's no 8s, there's no 9s, and there's no 10s, then I've probably made my classes too small. They probably need to be bigger. And also, we want to avoid open-ended classes. A lot of times you'll see things that say 0 to 5, 6 to 10, 11 to 15, 16 and above. That's open-ended because there is no ending number. It's just 16 and above. We don't want that. We know where our data stops. And so we want to be more specific, 16 to 20. Okay. So these are your guidelines for your classes for grouped data. Make sure you remember this formula, 2 to the k power greater than or equal to n. So I'm going to stop sharing this screen and I'm going to share an Excel file for you so that we can work a problem together. If you want to work along with me, then this is the file Del hold times from your chapter 2 data sets. So you can pause the video, go to where you've got your downloads and choose chapter 2 and then Del hold times. Make sure you enable editing so we can work with this file. I am going to zoom my screen so that you can see better. Once again, you don't have to do this. Okay, so these are my Del hold times. When people called Del customer service, we took a survey of, well, let's scroll and see how many people. We took a survey of 51 people and we recorded their hold times. And it says right here that these were in minutes. So this data is already sorted, but remember, you know how to sort up here, right-hand corner, if your data is not sorted. I always want them smallest to largest so I can go, okay, the lowest amount of time anybody had to hold was 0.6, not even a whole minute. And the most amount of time somebody was on hold was 17.4 minutes. Now, this is obviously continuous data because it's not whole numbers, and we are going to do frequency and histogram, grouping these together. So when I'm going to do this, step number 1 is determining how many classes I'm going to need. So that 2 to the k power greater than or equal to n. We just looked and n is 51. So I've got to find a number of classes that equals that solves that formula that's greater than 51. So let's just do it. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16, times 2 is 32, times 2 is 64. So 6. I need 6 classes to solve that formula. Okay, so I'm just going to make some little notes on our spreadsheet as we go, just so you can see what we're doing. So I'm going to put 6 right here, 6 classes, so that I can remember. Once we determine our number of classes, we have to determine our class width. The formula for our class width is our max data point. Oops, I can't type. Minus our minimum data point. Y'all, don't make fun of my typing. Then I'm going to divide that by K, my number of classes. So I guess to do a proper formula, I should have this in parentheses. So if you look back at this, you won't get confused. Okay. So our maximum data point minus our minimum data point divided by our number of classes. So what's that going to give me if I calculate it? Well, if I'm going to use a formula, let's put in our equal sign, open up my parentheses. Since these are in order, I know my max data point is at the bottom. So I'm going to highlight 17.4. And then I'm going to put in my minus sign, and I'm going to put in 0.6, which is in A2. Close my parentheses, divided by, what did we just say our number of classes was? That's right, 6. Enter, and I get 2.79991. Now, when we work this formula, we typically are going to round. Sometimes we're going to round up to 3. In another problem, your answer might come out to be 872, and you round up to 1,000. Once again, like a lot of stuff in statistics, there's not a correct answer. If the example I just said, where I said you might get 872 and round up to 1,000, if you rounded up to 900 and somebody else rounded up to 1,000, y'all's answers will look a little bit different, but they would both be acceptable answers. I know that doesn't necessarily always make you happy to hear, but you'll get more used to this as we go through. We're just in chapter 2. So now that I know that my class width, y'all want me to type that in for y'all? Class width equals max data point minus minimum data point divided by the number of classes. So now I know I'm going to have 6 classes, and I'm going to round up to 3 for my class width. Well, where do I start? Well, let's see. If my lowest value is 0.6, then a logical place to start for my first class would be 0. Now, could you start with 0.6? Yes. But if you start with 0.6 and you're going to have 0.6 and you want it to be 3 wide, you're going to end up with a decimal point as your upper limit. And those are just harder to read and work with. So we like to keep them simple. Let's use whole numbers for our classes. So let's say 0 through 0, 1, 2, that gives me 3, right? So if anything from 0 up through 2, that's 3 wide. Now, since we're using continuous data, it would actually be 0 through 2.9. Or you could say 0 to less than 3. So anything from 0 all the way up to 2.99999 would fall into this category. My next category would be 3 to less than 6. So 3 to anything up to 5.99999. What would my next one be? That's right. It would be 6 to less than 9. My next one would be, 9 to less than what? 12. And my next one would be 12 to less than 15. And my next one would be 15 to less than 18. That's right. Okay. So now, to make sure we're following our rules, are they all equal? Yes, they all have a width of 3. Does every data point have a place to go? Well, the smallest one would fit in this category. My largest number is 17.4, and it would fit in this category. So yes, everything has a place to go. There is no overlap, etc. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to have to tell Excel what I want my bins to be. Remember, bins is Excel's word for classes. So I just typed in my classes. Let me put a little heading up there for you. But Excel can't read these. For Excel, I have to give it bins, and they can only be one number. For grouped data, if I put in my upper limit, Excel automatically knows what to include. So what is the upper limit of 0 to less than 3? We said anything up to 2.99999. Okay. I don't have to put in all those 99999s. I can just put in however many decimal points my data has. And it just has 1, so I can just put 2.9. So what's 3 to less than 6 going to be? That's right, 5.9. And y'all better be answering when I hesitate to give y'all time to answer. And this one's going to be 8.9. And this one's going to be 11.9. This one's going to be what? 14.9. And this one's going to be 17.9. So for Excel, my bins are just my upper limits of each one of my classes. Now I'm ready to do my histogram. So just like we did a histogram previously, I'm going to go to the Data tab. I'm going to click on Data Analysis. I'm going to go to Histogram. My input range. Now, we have labels in this one. So if I highlight all the way from A1 down to A51, I included that label. So I better make sure I have this labels checkbox marked, because that tells Excel, hey, there's a word there, just ignore it. Right here, I need to tell it my bins. So I'm going to highlight for my bins. Why is it not? It's not letting me highlight. I mean, y'all hold on, my computer's locked up or something. Let's just start over. Histogram. Okay. You know what? This time, I'm just not even going to highlight the labels, just to show you both ways. So this time, I'm only going to highlight A2 through A51. And since I didn't include the word, then I don't need to check that labels box. So just whichever, it's not going to make any difference. So don't include, if you don't include labels on one, don't include labels on either. Ooh, and I was talking and y'all let me mess up. I didn't move my cursor. That happens. I get people asking me questions all the time in class about, but it's not letting me put anything in the bin range. Yeah, you just forgot to move your cursor just like I did then. See, I'm human too. We all make mistakes. Luckily, that was one that was easy to fix. Now, highlight my bins. Okay, there we go. No labels, new worksheet, chart output. Okay, ta-da, there's my histogram. So see, it gave me my frequency and it gave me my histogram. If I make this a little bit bigger so y'all can see it more, don't forget, just like with our other histogram, we want to change these titles. We want to make it look prettier. But the one thing you have to do that isn't open for interpretation is on a histogram for grouped data, we don't want any white space between our bars. Because if you think about it, this bar represents 0 to 2.9. And this bar represents 3 to 6. Well, there is no space between 2.9 and 3. So we want those bars to touch. So I'm going to click on one of my bars, and then I'm going to right click. Why is this thing not liking me today? Let me switch to my mouse. There we go. I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose Format Plot Area. And then when I do that, I am going to click on my bars. So this stands for color. This is different effects. Your bars is what changes your series options. These bars are called a series. And once I do that, see where it says gap width? I don't want any gap width. So I change that to 0, and now my bars are touching. So right click inside your box, choose Format Plot Area, and then we will choose, already formatted so they're gone right now, but we'll choose our little bars. I was just trying to show you the steps again. I can close that if I want to see my screen better. Now, it automatically did our frequencies for us. So if the problem asks you for relative frequency or cumulative relative frequency, you can use the frequency they gave you and then add your relative and your cumulative, just like I showed you in a previous video. And don't forget, even though it puts your histogram and your frequency on a new sheet, if we go down here and click the sheet that says data, there's where we had all of our other stuff showing. Now, the only part of what's on this screen that you had to have was the original data set and the bins. I just put all this up there so that you could see it and you would know what we were doing. But you don't have to always put that in Excel if you don't need to. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Hope this has helped. Y'all let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you soon.